Welcome to our first LTCI Insights and Sales Bites discussion. This is Brittany Button, long-term care insurance specialist for Art Jetter and Company. Today, we have Larry Moore, Regional Marketing Director of Lincoln Financial Group, joining us. Now, as promised, we're going to keep these sessions short and simple for y'all today. We want to review corporate-funded, asset-based long-term care insurance. This will help you position long-term care insurance in a way you may not have thought about before. Yet, before we get started, I would like to point out we have attached some handouts to this presentation. Please feel free to download those. Also, at the end of this session, we want to answer any and all questions you may have regarding long-term care insurance, even if it may be off topic. So we're going to ask you, mute your phones now. When we go towards the end of the presentation, we want to try to unmute the lines and have a great casual conversation with you. However, if there's too much background noise, we will end up remuting, and you can type your questions into the chat and or questions box. We're here to help you grow your sales in 2020. So, Larry, let's get started.
Great, Brittany. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We're going to keep this as short and sweet as possible. And consequently, because of the time frame we've allotted for this, we can't go really deep into tax questions. We can certainly take Q&A after the call and then, anytime after that. So getting right started to it, why are we talking about this as a strategy? Why is it good for you as a broker or an advisor? I'm speaking to you, first of all, as somebody who's worked in this space, but I also am speaking to you as a wholesaler who I engage in conversations with people every day, every week about this. It's something no one is talking about. And when I mean nobody, I'm talking about there might be 8 or 10 people in the country that are actively engaged in executive carve-out LTC. Very small number. So if you want to be the first one to bring up an idea to somebody, you most likely will. They probably will think we didn't know it was possible. Secondly, when we talk about this kind of a business, providing long-term care coverage either funded to a company, to its owner, or to its key employees, what's great about this is that it's an off-cycle enrollment, meaning there's no specific enrollment period you have to deal with. It can happen at any time the business feels it's a strategic fit. I've seen them happen all times of the year. Also, it's an opportunity for multiple sales. That's the obvious one. You're going to get, in many cases, more than 2 or 3 applications at one time. And we have an example of a case. Of course, I don't disclose the company. I don't disclose the kinds of the names and all that, but it'll give you a sense of what's possible. But most importantly is this, aside from all that I shared with you, you are now exposed to prospective clients with people with either resources to invest with you or risks that they need you to help them manage. So getting right down to it, why is this good for business? Especially now, we have a very strong economy. And when economies are strong and vibrant, the competitive world for talent, whether it's intellectual talent, unique skill sets, especially for small to mid-sized businesses, because they tend to have a more unique requirement for business talent, becomes incredibly difficult. It's hard to find talent. It's hard to replace key people. So when we think about benefits for this particular group of individuals, it's all about rewarding, retaining the best people and trying to recruit the best people. I refer to this as the 3 R's. So when you talk about this, reward, retain, recruit, you could say them however you want. That's what it's all about. What's also great about this kind of a strategy is that the business can decide who gets this and who doesn't. So they can be selective. Since it's not subject to ERISA, when we talk about employee benefits, that's why we have this discretionary power. And most importantly, these are really easy to execute. It's simply a matter of when you're ready to go and you complete the applications, either paper or electronically. We can do it either way. So they're very easy to execute. They're also very quick to go through. The case I'm going to share with you actually went through in a couple of months. So when you look at your marketplace, where do you go to find these kinds of people? I would say, first of all, don't restrict yourself. This is a strategy that's applicable to businesses of any type and any size, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit. It doesn't matter. You can do this any kind of business structure you want. I advise that you obviously target firms where incomes are high: physician groups, law firms, CPA firms, engineering firms. I'll give you an example of a group I had worked with. It was an anesthesiologist group, and Obviously, the average salaries are enormous. They can never buy enough disability income. And my discussion with the head anesthesiologist of this group was very interesting. It was about, we make a lot of money, obviously. We never can buy enough disability income. Also, because of our various hobbies, we're restricted in terms of what we can get. So he said, for instance, I'm a pilot. Does that impact how much LTC I can get? And I said, no, it doesn't impact that at all. We don't ask those kinds of questions. Also, as you hear, you're going to change your thinking around LTC, because with this audience, it's more about disability than getting old and sick. They can't identify with the latter. They can certainly identify with something like a disability that could interrupt their ability to work. So we're going to speak in those terms on this call. So at the end of the day, it's either somebody who runs a company or somebody who owns a company. So when you look at your clients, whether they're physicians, attorneys, own a business, or happen to be president or senior VP of a business, those are the kinds of people that you're looking for. Why is this strategy good for the business? Well, I pretty much have said it. Reward, retain, recruit. It's good for the business to keep the best talent that you have. And this is, benefits in this environment, in this market, is what makes it happen. Now, I'm going to bypass this and go right here, because for some reason there was a couple redundant slides. I talked about changing your psychology and your thinking around selling LTC. Okay, this is what's important. You have to make the LTC narrative appealing and relevant to working age people. Somebody in their 50s is not thinking about necessarily what life will be like when they're 83. They're thinking about what life might be next year when they turn 56 or 58, right? So what we're going to do in this discussion, and what you're going to want to do in general with this discussion, if you want to appeal to younger people, and by the way, this would impact any discussion you have with younger people as opposed to older people, is think more in terms of disability. When we talk about a company's ability to buy disability income, it's very expensive insurance, and oftentimes so much so they never can get enough of it because it becomes too costly. Long-term care insurance works like disability. I'll demonstrate that in a few minutes, in the sense that you're either physically disabled or there's a cognitive loss. Doesn't matter how the disability happened, doesn't matter how old you are, it's just happened. So if you can imagine a situation where a key executive becomes disabled, draws on their DI, guess what? If they meet the eligibility criteria for a long-term care policy, they can draw tax-free benefits for that to augment their DI. So the two ways to look at this to the employer is that we're enhancing their disability income coverage, or it becomes, as I say, the DI for the rest of their life. Once you reach age 65, disability income benefits typically go away. This is now long-term care becomes the handoff, right? The DI for the rest of your life. The other part that has appeal to this group is the idea of cash flow, because guess what? It's about income. In fact, many cases, you're going to find most people in their 50s or 60s aren't going to put down a single premium. They're going to look for a way to fund it out of income. So the fact that we can set this up as, for instance, a 10-pay is very appealing to a business, because what they're looking at this as, well, we don't want to completely fund this and have our key executive resign and go someplace else next year. Somehow we got to meter our risk in terms of our financial exposure. So 9 times out of 10, these are 10 pays. There are some exceptions to the rule, but that pretty much is what it's all about. Now, when we talk about your thinking about long-term care and how you visualize it, this is what your clients are going to see this in very different way than maybe we're talking about it right now. And your job is to undo that thinking and to save the Socratic discussion about this. Typically, when people visualize the need for long-term care, what they're also looking at is old, sick people in nursing homes. Not a very rosy picture, and something they typically don't want to talk about. You're going to talk about it in different terms. You're going to make it relevant, again, to somebody who's younger. And guess what? There are lots of examples of young people who have either needed long-term care or are receiving long-term care. For instance, you think of Michael J. Fox. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's at a very young age 29 years old. We remember Christopher Reeves in Superman, right? A physical specimen, completely debilitated and paralyzed at the age of 45 due to a spinal cord injury. Patricia Summit is another interesting example where she was diagnosed. In case you don't know who she was the most successful basketball coach in college basketball history, University of Tennessee Lady Vols. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 59, died at 64, which kind of basically runs against all the norms we think about with Alzheimer's. Linda Ronstadt, of course, another example. These are young people, and you want to use examples, if you need to, of people that are the age of these working people, right? That's what makes this so relevant, because suddenly they realize we never thought of it this way. That's typically what ultimately comes out of it. We never thought of long-term care insurance in this way. In fact, it's disability, but more at a chronic level. In fact, when we think about 40% of nursing home residents these days are under the age of 65, it's kind of eye-opening. So why do we say this? This is all they need to understand. When we think about long-term care coverage, guess what? There's your physical disability, your need for assistance with 2 of 6 activities of daily living, or the need for continuous supervision due to a cognitive loss. No more, no less. It doesn't matter how it happened. It doesn't matter what aspect of your job or profession you can perform anymore. Bottom line is it's happened, and a tax-free benefit will be the result. Now, getting down to the brass tacks, what are the 2 most common and appealing ways to fund an executive carve-out LTC plan? Well, the 2 tactics are either you're going to draw money out of retained earnings or cash in the business. Typically, for a business owner themselves, a person who owns the company or who has a high level of ownership in the company. You know, somebody may be a 50-50 partner or split 25%, 4 ways, right? Sometimes it's more advantageous to leverage retained earnings out of the business and fund the premiums in that manner. As it relates to the less than 2% shareholder, the employee, Section 162 executive bonus is a very attractive way to do this. In fact, it's the most common way to do this. It's clean, it's simple, and again can be applied to any kind of business structure. You have a lot of flexibility with this. In fact, when I think of long-term care, or I should say hybrid long-term care contracts that even have the 2 components of the life insurance policy with the pure LTC rider, there's a lot of discussion about how I can treat one aspect of the contract different than the other. And you get into this kind of complex conundrum about, well, I can treat the rider as, LTC, but the life insurance is treated as life insurance. And you get into this kind of myopic discussion about taxes and suddenly having to break certain things out of tax time. Don't even worry about that when you go into a Section 162 executive bonus. That's the important part. But as you see from the second bullet down, we see this done in 2 ways. Most of the time, you're going to see what we call a double bonus, not a single bonus, but a double bonus. When we talk about this kind of a product and a pass-through entity like a S Corp LLC sole proprietorship, that's the most common forms of business that we see. Typically, what's happening is that the company will pay the premium and basically deduct it, but there is a taxable impact to the employee, the imputed income. So what we see happening most of the time is that when the bonus is paid, it's not only paid to cover the cost of the premium, but also to cover the cost of the imputed income tax that could impact that employee. That's the double bonus. But they could do it just a single bonus, and guess what? Paying the imputed income tax on an LTC premium for a product like MoneyGuard, for instance, is a lot less than having to pay the whole premium. So however you look at it, leveraging the business either in of itself or its own assets is going to create a more economical situation, I should say, for the individual looking at insurance. So to summarize this, when we think about the advantages of Section 162 Executive Bonus Plan, the advantages really are 2-part, both to the employee and to the employer. To the employee, first of all, when you think about a hybrid product like MoneyGuard, there's death benefit protection that you're getting, which is nice. There's also a living need component that is also attractive, meaning the post-retirement aspect of this thing for long-term care after retirement. Either limited or no out-of-pocket costs, depending on how you structure the bonus. The cost paid by the employer, not the employee. Individually owned. This is important because can the company own the contracts? The answer is yes, but that becomes a more complicated arrangement. Typically, in fact, every case I've ever been involved in, the business has not owned them. And of course, the beneficial tax treatment of the benefits upon claim, very attractive that way. To the employer, again, helping them retain, reward, and attract top talent, always top priority. There are income tax deductions to the business for the cost of the insurance, for the premiums that they pay. That's attractive. These are easy plans to establish and administer, meaning the Section 162 executive bonus, right? Very easy to administer, easy to establish. You can be selective in terms of who receives this bonus and who doesn't. There's no minimum or maximum number of lives. And of course, because this is not a traditional voluntary benefit play, we're not subject to ERISA or any sort of IRS type approvals for this kind of a deal. Now, I'm going to share with you an example in a few minutes that's going to give you a sense of what the possibilities are. But oftentimes, what you see is, what kind of coverage is typical in an executive carve-out situation? What do they usually see? Because oftentimes, and many of you out there probably already know this, when you look at your typical group long-term care insurance contract, the benefits are usually pretty slim. I see a lot of 2-year plans with $50 or $100 a day benefits, and that's about it. Well, to give you a sense that you don't have to sell huge benefits, but get a sense of how claims unfold. There's a biannual claims study that's run by the American Association of Long-Term Care, one of our trade organizations. And what we're showing are claims numbers based on their persistency. And if, for instance, if I look at this column, age 75 to 84, what it will tell you, and these are aggregate numbers industry-wide, not specific to any carrier, 76% of the claims that take place will make it past the 90th day, right? Probably no big surprise there. But let me take you down to 2 years. Only 36% of claims typically make it past the second year. 24% make it past the third year. Only 15% make it past the fourth year, and just slightly over 10% make it past the fifth year. So at the end of the day, when you're talking about a 3-year plan or a 4-year plan as an executive carve-out, that's attractive. That makes sense because you're hitting the averages. You have the data here to show your prospective client, what we're talking about is something that hits the averages, or we can talk about something that takes you more to the outer fringes of what the risk could really look like. That's the only reason I incorporated this slide. So now let's take a look at this situation here. This was an example of a case that took us about 2 months to put together. We're using MoneyGuard 3 premiums, so the numbers are real. It was actually on a MoneyGuard 2, but in this case, we're going to show you what the premiums would have looked like with the MoneyGuard 3 product. $8,000 a month, 5-year benefit, 3% compound. Now, here's the story before we look at the numbers, right? This was a car dealership in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's why these numbers are so big. There were 4 key executives, 2 men, 2 women that ran this business, right? And they were faced with an interesting dilemma. The cost of their disability income was getting very high, and they also knew that based on their ages, we're not going to have that coverage much longer. What are we going to do next? So then we introduced the idea of long-term care insurance as a chronic disability strategy. Tax-free funding strategy for a chronic disability is how I like to talk about it. And as we started walking through what the coverage does and how it works, in their situation, they kind of looked at each other and say, well, shoot, this makes a lot more sense than keeping our DI. And they actually used the MoneyGuard plans that we recommended to replace their DI. That was a business decision they made. And to give you a sense of what the numbers look like for these 4 people, right? They're 10 pays, of course. So while the aggregate premium numbers look attractive, you'll see the ages, age 65 down to age 60. But look at the annual 10 pays. This is what's interesting. That's an annual premium that this automobile dealership is going to pay of $85,732 a year, right? They structured this as a Section 162 executive bonus. They didn't use retained earnings in this case. And what's interesting, when they looked at the fact that, my goodness, for $85,000 today, we just purchased over $3.4 million in benefits for just 4 people. That's really attractive. That makes sense to us. So they went forward with it. You can tell that obviously these are attractive deals from a compensation standpoint, but they're also attractive deals in terms of the value that they bring to the business in terms of augmenting their existing benefits. So with that, I just threw a lot at you. This is the end of our call in the sense of the content. We just want to give you a call to action. What you want to do is go back to your database and identify clients who either run a business or some sort of professional practice. Could be a CPA firm, could be a medical group, it could be anything, an engineering firm or any kind of business. Also, though, this is kind of interesting. Connect with benefit brokers. Why do I say this? Benefit brokers don't get anywhere near this kind of coverage. They don't come close to this stuff. They just stick to what they know, or as I say, stick to their knitting. However, that's a highly competitive business too. And they typically like to be the first one to their client with a new, fresh idea. You're the one that can bring this new, fresh idea to the table, orchestrate a compensation split of some sort. But telling them about this, because they haven't really heard much about it, gives them something new to bring to the table that's important and relevant to them. So benefit brokers are not a bad place to go. And then, of course, ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got Jetter. And Jetter's there to help you walk through this, evaluate opportunities. We all can do this together. We're all one big team. And with that, I am at the last slide. There's the Jetter phone number, 800-228-0008. Definitely feel free to reach out to this fine company anytime to talk about any of these strategies that they have available. As you can tell, they've been around a long, long time and do a fantastic job supporting all of their producers in the field. And with that, Brittany, I'm ready for any questions you have.
Perfect. Well, first, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And of course, you, Larry, for co-piloting today's session with me. So we did get a couple questions out over the chat box, which we'll address first. For those who don't have questions, feel free to drop off. For those who do have questions, please stay on board. We'll get you unmuted. Hopefully, we'll be able just to have a nice casual conversation. But before we unmute the lines, first, I've got a gentleman asking, is there any discount offered if a minimum number of lives is submitted on a multi-life basis? Now,
not
overall,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you first.
Okay, no, there is not a discounted rate. There's a discounted rate for couples, but that's the extent of it.
And that's going to be for Lincoln Financial's MoneyGuard plan. We do work with other carriers, more so on the traditional standalone side. Yes, we can do a multi-life platform, and you could be able to see some discounts and possibly even some simplified underwriting. So with that, we've also got a question. If somebody were to be unable to qualify for traditional long-term care insurance, would Lincoln Financial potentially consider them for coverage on MoneyGuard?
Good question. And Brittany, you probably know the answer as well as anybody. Most likely not. Everybody's underwriting things in a pretty similar way. Brittany, I don't know what your experience has been, but that's kind of been mine. So it all depends. All the carriers have their own different little, sweet spots when it comes to underwriting, but most cases, depending on the severity of their situation, probably not.
And that's correct. So we've been able to find alternatives within the hybrid portfolio for those who have been unable to get coverage for the standalone long-term care insurance. And of course, it just depends. What's the medical conditions? What does their background look like? And that's where you can take advantage of Kathleen Quinn. She is our in-house underwriter here at Art Jetter & Company, very knowledgeable in this, and works with the underwriting teams at each individual carrier to see where we can get a consideration from. So we always like to ask you to field underwrite. Let's get that information before submitting an application to make sure we're getting the best option out there for the people you're working with. And the last question typed in, this discussion, yes, we focused on the MoneyGuard policy. However, these sessions that Larry and I are going to be doing in the future, we want to talk all things long-term care. And so while Larry can answer a lot of industry questions and specific sales topics, he's going to be our expert for MoneyGuard. However, you feel free to ask questions on any other long-term care solutions we might be working with. That's what this session is for. And with that, I have now unmuted the lines. So if anybody would like to ask a question, we're here to help you out. Uh-oh, Larry, I think we've got a shy bunch.
I would like to make one quick comment. The only reason we even featured or mentioned MoneyGuard in this is that I had that one case as an example. So I think to your point, Jetter has a number of different possibilities as it relates to this particular market. Carriers are doing different things and offer different programs. So yeah, that the intention wasn't to make this a MoneyGuard presentation, but just to use one example that happened in our region. So that was good comment.
Well, and Larry, we appreciate those real world examples because these are cases taking place today, an opportunity you all on this call might have within your own book of business. So with that, I don't show any other questions, but as you can tell, Larry and I are very excited to host LTCI Insights and Sales Bites as we present a new topic each month. Our next session is Friday, March 20th, same time, same place, so make sure to mark your calendars and watch for the next invite. And of course, once you get off the line, if you still have questions or would like a more one-on-one discussion, please feel free to reach out to our team at the 800 number you see listed or email us at ltci@jetter.com. Well, Larry, I think that concludes our call. Everyone have a great afternoon, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.